Hello and welcome to 11FS Spotlight. I'm Mariette Ferreira. In this weekly show, we shine a spotlight on the best and brightest in the tech and financial services industry to try and understand what gets them going, growing, and what they think the future of the industry will look like. Now, in today's Spotlight, I'm delighted to be joined by Abba Newbery, CMO of Habito. Hey Abba, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. It's good to see you again. Last time we talked, we were over on Fintech Marketing Podcast, and I've seen you on lots of stuff in the meantime. So glad to squeeze you into our roadshow.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So last time we spoke, we talked a bit about how to build a brand in financial services. We talked about the campaigns that you're running. We're not going to dive back into that, but for anyone that was interested, feel free to have a look over on Fintech Marketing Podcast. Today, Abba, we're going to have a chat a bit about you, about Habito's plans, how you speak to customers, and of course, trust. So to start off with, can you give us the elevator pitch, the 1 minute pitch for Habito?
Oh, the 1 minute pitch for Habito. Yes, of course. Habito we are a fintech disruptor in the world of mortgages. We're 6 years old, 5 years live. I've been there for 4 years. So we're not just trying to disrupt mortgage broking. We're also trying to disrupt mortgage lending. So we are a lender as well as a broker. And what we're trying to do there is not enter a rate war, but more kind of invent mortgage products that better suit the lives we live today. You know, kind of more suited to kind of self-employed, squiggly careers, an aging population, stuff like that. I guess we are also what I would call a home buying platform. So if you do go into getting a mortgage or buy a house, you also need a solicitor to do your conveyancing and a surveyor to make sure that the house doesn't fall down. And that can often be as stressful a process as getting a mortgage. So we now do all of that. So we'll help you buy your house and actually have in-house conveyancing. So yeah, broker, lender, home buying platform.
That's a fantastic pitch. Thank you. I don't know if you guys do any comparisons with the home buying industry in other countries, but my experience is it's so bloody complicated in the UK. So yeah, I think any sort of simplicity that you guys can bring to the process is so welcome to this industry. But what about you? I mean, this is your first foray into fintech, I believe. So why fintech? What brought you to Habito?
Gosh, that's such a good question, and my answer, my answer is not probably a good one actually. I didn't have any kind of passion to work in fintech, if I'm honest. To be honest with you, I didn't really understand it. And I was very lucky to be introduced to Dan Hegarty, who is our founder, by a mutual friend, ex-colleague, so someone who'd worked with Dan and someone who'd worked with me in the past. And we got introduced, and Dan just blew my mind. He blew my mind with the passion he had for solving the problem in mortgages. He blew my mind with how big and enormous a problem it is. So, for a lot of people, they're spending about £300 a month, too much on their mortgage, which, you roll that up over the course of the year. And that's a big, big number. And yeah, I was just sort of sucked into this incredible idea of being able to save people a huge amount of money, fix something that was stressing them out, causing them sleepless nights and all of that bad stuff. And the opportunity as a marketeer to build a brand from scratch, which you never get. That's a once in a career opportunity.
I must agree with you. Many fintech marketers that I speak to, I'm not sure if, this is the line, but for me, certainly, where I've worked before in financial services, it feels very real. It feels like, these are actual problems that you're solving. So I can 100% see the appeal of sounds cheesy, but you're actually making people's lives easier and better and solving problems. I mean, there's not many industries that you get to say that. And, for marketing careers, of course, there's the University of Unilever where you'll learn lots and grow lots. But I don't know, do you actually get to make a real difference? So I can definitely see the appeal. But speaking of you talk about you guys building a brand and a product to serve customers for their needs today. One thing that we talk about quite a bit in design, but also in marketing, is around simplicity, but also just jargon, right? And in your world, jargon is just everywhere. And considering the state of global financial literacy, it couldn't be more important to simplify this, right? So I'm interested to hear a little bit about, if you will, your process. Like you said, for yourself, coming into this industry is a bit of a learning curve. How do you and how does your business go about learning the customer's language?
Habito really was founded because Dan, who I think you've met Dan Mariette, but he's an extremely he's a beyond clever guy. He also comes from Fintech previously, and he was bamboozled by all of the jargon that gets chucked at you in getting a mortgage. So that's kind of one of our founding principles: is strip it all back and make it all clear. And as I think you kind of alluded to, actually the average reading age for an adult in the UK is an 11-year-old's reading age. So you've also got this quite difficult situation where the people who are most likely to kind of have that lower reading age are therefore also the most likely to kind of get ripped off by their mortgage, and probably the most likely to sit in a slightly lower socio-economic demographic. So there's definitely an unfairness that seems to kind of sit at the heart of financial jargon, and in particular mortgages. And I guess part of the difficulty with us, because you asked that very good question, which is how do you understand what the customer thinks about this? And the problem with mortgages is the customers are so bamboozled, so overwhelmed. They kind of close their ears to it. And I think we've all done it. In fact, we probably all do it every day when we just click accept all cookies rather than look at the cookies we're really signing up to, right? But we know that people don't read the terms and conditions. They scroll to the end, they've got to the end in, we know this from technology, right? Because we have all the data, they've got to the end in 30 seconds. That's physically impossible to do and actually have read it. And so they don't know what they're signing up to. And they don't know what the words mean. They don't know what SVR means. They don't know what mortgage term means, blah, blah, blah. So actually, instead of going to kind of customers and sort of, I guess it's a really hard question to ask, which is do you really understand this? And someone's not going to say no. They're going to go yes, because they don't want to look silly. So we work with a company called Fairer Finance. I don't know if you know them.
Yeah, we've come across them. Yeah.
And so we're the first. I think we might still be the only mortgage broker website to be judged totally jargon free. Our mortgage terms and conditions are also verified by Fairer Finance to be totally jargon free. And comprehensible to any 11-year-old. In fact, we got our chief risk officer's 11-year-old in to come and read out our terms and conditions for people who can't, people who have reading difficulties or, kind of any sight impairment. And then we're able to actually judge for ourselves whether an 11-year-old really can understand a mortgage contract. So it's very boring. It was very, very hard work. We never talk about it. We never really badge it. We're more kind of proud that we are comprehensible, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I suppose you don't really talk about what you don't do. You talk about what you do. I can see that, that those are not really conversations that you have, but, I feel like it's worth, acknowledging that because, there's work and effort that goes into avoiding these things and actually making it simpler. And I'm curious about why there is still so much jargon, and neither of us have the sort of full answer to this. But for me, it feels like there's a combination of sort of complacency, maybe even fear of change, or maybe even sort of a misguided sense of, if I'll build trust for my brand if I sound serious and professional. But I don't know, there's just so much still jargon and fluff floating around, isn't there?
Yeah, and I guess it's difficult to know why. I don't think anyone's doing it deliberately or like for self-interested reasons. It's just, you end up in if you work in a tech business, you end up using your own form of jargon, and financial services has kind of, a lot of people have been in the mortgage industry or financial services for like years and years, and so you can't hear the jargon, but I think it's important to like punctuate it and change it, like particularly in mortgages, which is for most people the biggest amount of money that leaves their bank account every single month. I think the next biggest is childcare. That you should really know the consequences of that and what you're in for and what your SVR is, and why you should really think about like putting your mortgage date, your mortgage renewal date in your calendar so that you remember to do it, because you flip onto that rate. So like the standard variable rate is the actual rate of your mortgage, and you were given an introductory rate in order to get you to switch there. It's going to be a big leap up. It's going to be bigger than the energy increases that we're all talking about currently. So there's real kind of customer detriment for not understanding these things. But as I said, we just get too ingrained in our own world, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And like you say, you don't see it after a while. Did you imagine 5-10 years ago that you would be talking about standard variable rate in conversations and interviews?
No, I never imagined working in mortgages. I love it though. It's like, it's insane. And you can see it from our Trustpilot reviews. Like when it goes well, it doesn't always go well, even with us, but like when it does go well, people literally, you can see the stress falling from people's faces. It's pretty amazing.
Fantastic. Now, I mean, you guys are known for taking a different approach with your brand and with your marketing, with a very defined brand voice. How do you almost reconcile your customers' language and your customers' way of speaking and what they understand? How do you reconcile your customers' language with your brand language? How do you bring that together?
Yeah, I mean, I guess our ads are pretty, and our marketing can be pretty kind of crazy and out there, but it's always rooted in the truth of what customers have told us. So, like, kind of one of the first things that I did when I joined Habito was go and talk to customers, and we obviously we do this all the time now, and they were very honest with us, and they were like, "It's terrible getting a mortgage. We're really stressed. We feel like we're being ripped off. It's full of jargon." I'm stressed, I'm not sleeping. People even told us they stopped having sex with their partner. So our ads are rooted in that hell. I guess what that's doing for us as a brand is it's building that trust kind of by saying in a pretty batshit crazy way, we understand that this is a nightmare and you don't want to do it. And, it's a bit like doing your tax return. It's like a horror that's like hanging over you. Or it's a horror that that you have to go through to get the house that you really want to buy. And we're going to change that. And that acknowledgement of the horror has been a huge part of the trust that we've built, because most brands in our category, and by our category, I mean finance. I don't necessarily just mean mortgages. Like, just say it's all going to be fine. Don't worry, it's all going to be fine. And I think our customers find that a little patronizing. Particularly if you've gone through the experience before and it wasn't fine.
some of the best campaigns are rooted in customer truths. So it's interesting and also obvious to hear you say that, because it feels like, what else would you do? So I can see that coming through in your content. So that makes a lot of sense. But I'm interested in when you sort of built your brand voice. You started with your customer truths and then sort of built it out from there. But did that sort of tone and identity come naturally and shaped very quickly, or did you sort of try on a few different outfits first?
Yeah, I mean, we're only young, but we've been on like a pretty roller coaster journey in terms of our brand. In fact, I think my VP marketing, well, I know he slacked me this morning, and we'd been reading a very interesting Marketing Week article by Mark Ritson, and he was like, "We must not change our brand for the next 50 years, because we're on probably I'm going to say our third proper iteration of the brand. So it definitely didn't come easy to us. And I guess I walked into Habito. We just made a TV ad, and they were just kind of doing, I'm going to say a rebrand, but it was kind of like the first kind of proper, like structured and well thought through version of the brand, which we definitely stuck with, but we had to evolve, because the first, that sort of articulation of the brand was that we're a little lift in your journey to getting a house. And I was like, we are so much more than a little lift. Like, if we do this right, it's so much money. It's £3,500 a year. It's a new car. It's an amazing summer holiday. It's also getting rid of those stressful nights and those arguments with your partner and the fear of losing your house. We are like a game changer if you're in the house buying market. So that's kind of how we ended up evolving ourselves to something as in your face as Hell or Habito. And then now you'll see the kind of the new articulation of our kind of brand design and brand world and on our actual website, which again is much more, I mean, it's pretty out there. We call it phantasmagoric.
Oh, wow.
We can be a little intellectually pretentious at Habito. So apologies. But so which is like a sort of quite out there take on like how we want you to feel, which is like engaged, amazed, involved, interested in the process. So yeah, it's been a big journey. And of course, you know, like I remember in my first job when we changed to the little lift like logo. If you remember, Habito used to have a lifted O, that was part of that. And then a customer said to me, didn't you used to be red? And I was like, yes, we did used to be red. Oh no, like have we killed the brand? But yes, it's been a journey.
Sorry to interrupt. Didn't you always also go through a phase where you had to teach people how to pronounce your name?
Yes, everyone always says Habito.
For some reason.
I don't know why. And so yeah, the little lift on the O, which used to sit underneath the O, was designed to put the emphasis on the O, but it was just no. Everyone kept on saying Habito, so we just gave up.
And you started your press tour to say the name over and over again.
I did used to correct people. I've also given up. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Pronounce it how you want to pronounce it. Just come to us to get a mortgage.
I like that. Are there any other fintech brands that you look at and you think, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, not just from a brand perspective, from a product perspective? Is there anyone you're taking inspiration from?
Oh gosh, so many. I mean, we are always kind of inspired and live in aspiration to create content the way that Wealth Simple do. I'm very jealous of Jasper at Pension Bee for getting to sponsor the Brentford Bees. I think that's like awesome piece of work. I love the bravery of Farewell, and how they are taking on like death in such an interesting and strong way.
And
I
even
love the
Dead
piece.
Happy is doing a bit of that, right?
Yeah, but I think I like the Farewell tonality a little bit better. And I messaged the cover team the other day. I don't know if you've seen their new TV ad,
No,
but
no, no.
it uses pretty batshit crazy animation, and I think their tagline is "What if car insurance wasn't shit?" Except they don't say shit; they just use a picture of a bird shit, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So yeah, there seems to be
Fantastic.
tons of good work going on as people are getting like beyond the kind of product based marketing, which is where most fintechs start their marketing life.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. And even covers example there of what if it wasn't shit. Again, it feels like it's rooted in a customer truth of, clearly this is what they've been hearing over and over again. It's just, it's a terrible process. I like that. You talked about where fintechs start their journey as product marketing. Are there any sort of other, let's call it, common mistakes that you see fintech brands, fintech marketers make?
I mean, mistake is a really strong word. I was talking to like a finance group yesterday, and I think in many ways, marketing a finance brand full stop is one of the hardest jobs to do in marketing. You layer technology on top of that as well, which is not something that like people really, consumers like really understand. They understand the benefits of, but they don't understand the how and the whys. So I think fintech marketing is a really hard job, because not only have you also got to kind of like smash through that customer boredom, you've then got to like find yourself a clear benefit and a differentiated like tone of voice, and try and and then you're coming from zero brand awareness, so you're always you're always going to be dwarfed by one of the big banks or whatever. So I don't think anyone makes mistakes. I just think it's actually a really hard job.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of a braveness and a boldness, maybe that, you guys have shown, we're starting to see from more fintech brands, and just, just taking the opportunity, one, to stand out, because like you say, I mean, that inertia is real. Like, switching is switching problems. That's real. So any sort of just cut through, speak the customer's language. Yeah, love to see that. So I agree. Mistakes is strong word, but all these sort of fintech brands start with, as Jasper would say, a billboard with a phone and a phone and app, and then you learn from that. So it's a journey.
I think also what's really hard is like marketing isn't wholly a science, right? So even if you test your messaging beforehand, it doesn't mean that it's going to work. And like that's really hard, because you're going to try and do something which is going to take up quite a lot of the funding available to you, and it might not work. And so it can be very difficult to also then break away from the stuff that does work. And we certainly found that at Habito, which is like we were doing stuff that really, really worked. But when you looked forward, as you have to as a CMO, into 2 years' time, and you say, is the work that we're doing now going to take us to that level of customer growth within 24 months? And in our case, the answer was no. So it's really hard. We had to kind of, fly the aeroplane whilst also, buying and building another aeroplane and then trying to get everyone into that plane whilst they were both flying at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds like the life of a fintech. Just last question on that topic. You sort of talk about saying no to things. Is there anything that you actively say no to? Whether it's sort of the way that you approach your content or your, how you treat your brand. What do you actively say no to? Because I mean, you're as much sort of the brand guardian, and you're shaping it, but also protecting it at the same time. We sort of see incumbents leaning into different methods of building trust. You guys lean into sort of relatability, relevance. But what do you say no to sort of protect that customer trust?
Gosh, that is a really good question. I mean, we have tried a ton of things. So I guess we've never said no without trying it.
Okay.
And some things we've tried incredibly hard to crack and never been able to. So we say no because we're not good at it. There's other stuff that I have personal and professional misgivings about, which can make me a hard person to argue with or debate with, although we will still try. I mean, I'm very skeptical about influencer marketing in our market. Mm-hmm. I don't really want to pay somebody to say Habito is good. I'd like them to say that Habito is good. That said, we do pay for influencers when we're doing our skateboarding content. Mm. We try not to pay for that. Here's a really great mortgage service. The other thing we've recently said no to is kind of cashback and rewards.
The short-term fix.
Yeah, and it's very difficult. Part of the reason why we've said no is that they don't work for us particularly well. And that might be in the execution, but I think it's actually because mortgages are so enormous in terms of how much you have to spend. And, it's not just how much money you're borrowing, but it's removals and stamp duty and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just overwhelming. And so when you suddenly give someone it sounds ridiculous, but like a 75 or £100, you kind of cash back at the end of it. It's just a drop. It's a drop in the ocean. And the other thing I think about that is like a bit. It's kind of my own like personal view, which is I feel a bit like it the way I feel about influencers. I'd much prefer someone to like recommend us than incentivize recommendation. So actually we find that we have a monthly mortgage competition where we pay one of our customers monthly mortgage off for that month, not their whole mortgage.
That's amazing.
I'd love to do that. But that we found like gets us much more traction than giving everybody a smaller amount of money.
I love the idea of that. And I feel like we could have a whole new conversation about the influencer idea. But it's interesting because, like you say, there's different sort of elements to it. I know you guys sponsored the GB skateboarding team, which is fantastic. And, really that's sort of a brand trust, brand identity, execution in its own right. But yeah, the outright influencer, YouTuber, I could see why you would struggle with that in your industry. But we're coming to the end of the show, and I just want to finish off by asking you one last question. A really easy one.
Oh no, it's going to be one of the famous really difficult questions.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
My younger self?
Your youngest marketer self.
Oh, gosh. So much advice. I would say always have the courage of your convictions. Like, don't lose that ever. Maybe be less difficult. Maybe be less difficult along the way. And the other thing I think is really important is often, and you'll see this a lot of times with entrepreneurs, right? They're too early. Their business is too early. Mm-hmm. So I would also say, like, remember all those good ideas that you had.
I like that.
And don't be afraid to, like, revisit them. Don't always try and invent something completely new.
Just because it's not right for the moment doesn't mean it can't work.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's not right.
I like that. Thank you. See, it wasn't a hard question.
Also, my younger self is a long time ago. So,
all right. That brings us to the end of the show. Abba, thank you so much for answering the hard and the easy questions. Where can people find out more about you and about Habito?
I'm on LinkedIn as Abba Newbery, or you can follow Habito on Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram. Habito Loves Homes on Insta.
Right, that's all we have for this week. Make sure you follow us at 11FS on LinkedIn so you never miss an episode of Spotlight. And follow us over on our YouTube channel, and you can also catch up on previous episodes. Have a great week, everyone. Goodbye.